Streaming live from the Paul and Catherine Ranke Memorial Studio. This is TV Free Baltimore. Support for TV Free Baltimore comes from viewers like you. Become a TV Free Baltimore member by visiting patreon.com/TV Free Baltimore.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello and welcome to Maryland Politics. I am your host, Louise Baker. In the studio this evening, we have Maggie Domanowski, candidate for Baltimore County Board of Education in District 3. Maggie lives in Baltimore County and became much more involved in her children's education following the COVID shutdowns of 2020. Never a teacher herself, Maggie sat down next to her oldest child and realized the school system had failed her child. It wasn't the teachers or the administrators, it was the virtual system they were forced to navigate. Maggie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me today.
So I'd like you to briefly tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself and what motivated you to run for school board.
I decided to run because when I looked up what the Board of Education, who they work for, at the very top of that chart, it said students, parents, and community. And for the last 2 years, it didn't feel that way. It felt like they weren't listening to us as parents, they weren't listening to the students who wanted to be in school, and something needed to change.
Can you share with us a little bit more about your personal experience, in particular with your child who has some special learning needs?
Yes, of course. Our older son was in first grade when the shutdowns began, and we had just started the process of an IEP, which is something that we go through when a child might have a learning disability or special needs for learning. It took 2 years for us to get a diagnosis that he had ADHD and dyslexia. He's my easiest child, and it was very hard to watch him struggle through the virtual learning system. He couldn't pay attention to the computer screen. He missed his friends. He didn't know how to, convey his emotions of frustration. And I was worried, and my husband and I were so worried that they weren't going to open, so we decided to enroll them or apply for enrollment into a private school. When we enrolled our son, who was then in second grade, and our two youngest, who would be in kindergarten by that time, our kindergartners were going to get in, but our oldest was 2 full grade levels behind in reading. He was reading at a kindergarten level still. And it wasn't our fault, it wasn't this teacher's fault or the administration's fault. It was the virtual learning system. It failed him, it failed us, and I don't want anyone to have to go through that. No one should have to go through that.
I take it then your son's experience and experiences of children similar to your son is what has really motivated you to jump into this race.
Yes, I felt like we were being ignored. I watched the Board of Education meetings, the virtual meetings, and I would see parents frustrated, and I would see students frustrated, and there was a certain agenda that they wanted to settle, and they didn't want to hear that their way of dealing with pandemic wasn't the right way, when their own data showed it wasn't working. Students were falling further and further and further behind. And I thought about, here I am home with my child, working very hard to keep him at one level, and he's still behind. What about the children that don't have a parent that could sit next to him? And I never understood how that could happen, how they could just ignore all that whole group of parents and children that needed more than the virtual system, and they had nothing to offer us.
You mentioned your sons being 2 years behind. What other negative impacts did you feel impacted your child and other children as a result of the shutdowns and the virtual learning?
So when the shutdown happened, we all thought it was just going to be a 2-week thing and we would get back. But the longer and longer it went, I noticed how sad my son was becoming. You took away the one thing that he loved about school, the socialization. He missed his friends like crazy. He didn't understand why he couldn't see them. He was starting the questioning himself, am I going to make people sick? What's wrong with me? And myself told him there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. Everything is fine. We just have to navigate through this. But I will never let this happen again. If I am nominated to the board, I will never vote for another shutdown or mask mandates. Children need to be around other children. Children need to see their teachers' faces, especially at a young age. And I just feel like because of this pandemic, because of the mask mandates, because of the virtual learning, my son is so much further behind than he needs to be.
Who made the decision to close the schools and to create this virtual learning system?
The school board made that decision. They voted for it. It was a position that was put before them. Do we keep it open? Do we close it? And they got outnumbered. The ones that wanted it open weren't enough, and the ones that wanted it closed were too many. And we need more people on the school board that will stand up for what our children and our parents want. It didn't matter how many parents came forward and said that they wanted this school open, how many students came forward and said they wanted it open. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. The school board was not working for those students and was not working for those parents, and that needs to change.
So Maggie, you are a working mom.
Yes.
So how did this whole shutdown and this whole virtual system that you had to be so involved in affect your work, and how do you think that affected other working moms?
I was very fortunate in that my job sent me home to work from home as well, but I'm not going to say it was easy. I was very disconnected from my job. I was very disconnected from my coworkers, but I had to put my child first. I sat next to him. We worked together in the mornings. I made sure all of his schoolwork was done, and then I'd go do my work for my job. In that time that I was not able to keep an eye on him, and he didn't have anyone to play with, he was destroying our furniture. He found a pen and he would slice holes in our couches. This is my child that was the easiest child I have twins. He's the easy one, trust me. And I didn't even think that this was going through his head, but he was so isolated from his friends. He was so isolated, and he didn't know how else to work his frustrations. We actually set him up with the counselor at school, and immediately, once the school started open, within a month or two, she's like, he's doing great. I don't need to see him anymore. He just missed his friends.
How much more complicated or time stretched was getting your special needs child met through the system because of the shutdowns?
I don't know exactly how much longer it took, but I can say that it was pushed back at least 3 months because of the ransomware attack. We had actually had all of his testing completed by October, and we were set to have a meeting with his teachers and evaluators to go over the plan moving forward with the needs that he was going to need for school in November, right after Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving weekend, the ransomware attack happens. We can't get access to anything. I'm being told it's being pushed. We're trying to get a meeting. We didn't meet until February of 2021, almost 2 years after we started. And it's just right there, 2 years of learning loss, just because we didn't know what he needed.
Did you experience any other difficulties trying to just advocate simply for your child's needs?
I got a lot of negative feedback from some outside sources saying it's not a safe place for the teachers, it's not a safe place for the kids, or we don't have the vaccines yet, they don't have this, but they weren't, and they were telling us we needed to follow the science, and I was like, well, I'm following the science, and this is not affecting children this age group. We're not looking at the whole spectrum. Meanwhile, our children are falling further and further behind. Their mental health is deteriorating. They miss their friends. It didn't make any sense. And there were other states that never shut down. They came back. They were wearing the mask. They were telling us, well, we can't come back because we're not ready for it. I was like, well, what were you doing for the past year when we were supposed to be getting ready for our kids to come back in for COVID? If the masks work, why can't we come back into school? Our kids need to be there. And then we come back and we have to wear the mask for as long as we do. And you have these kindergartners who are trying to learn how to read and learn how to pronounce words. How do you learn how to pronounce a word? It is 80% visual. 80% visual for a child to learn certain words, and he can't see her teacher talk. We need to do something now. We need to work on getting our kids back on track. We need to get back to the basics. Reading, writing, arithmetic, math, science. I'm all for enlightening our children with new ideas, but we are so far behind in the basics they need to catch up there first.
So I take it you never envisioned yourself running for school board until this happened.
No, my mom laughs at me almost daily because she's like, I never thought you would be this parent. I never thought I would. I really started getting involved. I became a team mom. I became a curriculum liaison. I organized clubs for the school. I became a room parent. I did everything I could. And then this came up, and I was like, I have to. I was like, I can't just sit here and complain about it. I need to do something and put my name out there and put my name on the line. I was like, I'm not just a complainer. I don't just want what's best for my kid. I want what's best for all of our kids. The public school system is supposed to work for all of us, and it's not working for all of us.
Explain to me Baltimore County's organization chart.
You can look it up on their website. At the very top, above superintendent, above myself, above everyone else, it says students, parents, and community. They work for the students, parents, and the community. That's it. That's who you work for. And I don't know about the rest of the parents out there, but I have certainly not felt like they were working for me.
Who did you see them working for at that time?
I want to start by saying that my son's school has some of the best teachers I have ever had the pleasure of meeting. But there are some other teachers out there, there are some other organizations and special interest groups out there that don't have they don't have their best interests in mind. And they're not even the teachers that work in classrooms or the administrators that work in school buildings. They don't work in the buildings. And they're making decisions about students and teachers and administrators that do. They shouldn't be making those decisions. The teachers, the administrators, the students, the parents, and the community should be making the decisions for those students and those teachers and those administrators that actually work inside the buildings.
So it seems you're suggesting that we take politics out of the school system.
110%. I don't know when it started. I'm running nonpartisan. They're supposed to be nonpartisan. And I've actually been attacked for my politics when all I want to do is take the politics out of schools. Students should not know what their teachers' politics are. It's not about that. It's about learning. It's about having the best education for a successful future, to get a job in the world, to go to college if that's what they decide to do, or go to a trade school. We don't need to know about your politics. We need to know about history, where we came from, how we got there, how to add, how to multiply. You can teach a child both sides. We can't teach one side. We have to teach all sides and let them decide which, or I should say, we need to teach them how to think, not what to think.
Can you offer our viewers a brief closing statement and tell people why they should vote for you?
Of course. My name is Maggie Domanowski, and I'm running for District 3 Board of Education in Baltimore County. And I'm running because I want to give parents back their rights. I want to get the politics out of our schools. I want transparency in our classrooms. And I want an education for successful futures for our students. Parents should be able to teach their kids the values that they believe in. Teachers and administrators should teach our kids about math, science, how to read, how to write, history. Values belong to the parents.
Thank you very much for being here, and good luck in November.
Thank you.
And thank all of you for watching Maryland Politics. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TV Free Baltimore. I'm your host, Louise Baker. Take care, stay safe, and please join us for our next interview. Bye.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.